Chapter 5 of Army Life in a Black Regiment. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by F.N.H. Army Life in a Black Regiment by Thomas Wentworth Higginson. Chapter 5 Out on Picket. One can hardly imagine a body of men more disconsolate than a regiment suddenly transferred from an adventurous life in the enemy's country to the quiet of a sheltered camp on safe and familiar ground. The men under my command were deeply dejected when, on a most appropriate day, the 1st of April, 1863, they found themselves unaccountably recalled from Florida, that region of delights which had seemed theirs by right of conquest. My dusky soldiers, who based their whole walk and conversation strictly on the ancient Israelites, found that the prophecies were all set at naught, and that they were on the wrong side of the Red Sea. Indeed, I fear they regarded even me as a sort of reversed Moses, whose Pisgah fronted in the wrong direction. Had they foreseen how the next occupation of the Promised Land was destined to result, they might have acquiesced with more than their wounded cheerfulness. As it was, we were very glad to receive, after a few days of discontented repose on the very ground where we had once been so happy, an order to go out on picket at Port Royal Ferry, with the understanding that we might remain there for some time. This picket station was regarded as a sort of military picnic by the regiment stationed at Beaufort, South Carolina. It meant blackberries and oysters, wild roses and magnolias, flowery lanes instead of sandy barrens, and a sort of guerrilla existence in place of the camp routine. To the colored soldiers especially, with their love of the country life, and their extensive personal acquaintance on the plantations, it seemed quite like a Christmas festival. Besides, they would be in sight of the enemy, and who knew but there might, by the blessing of Providence, be a raid or a skirmish? If they could not remain on the St. John's River, it was something to dwell on the Coosaw. In the end, they enjoyed it as much as they expected, and though we went out several times subsequently until it became an old story, the enjoyment never waned. And as even the march from the camp to the picket lines was something that could not possibly have been the same for any white regiment in the service, it is worth while to begin at the beginning and to describe it. A regiment ordered on picket was expected to have reveille at daybreak, and to be in line for departure by sunrise. This delighted our men, who always took a childlike pleasure in being out of bed at any unreasonable hour, and by the time I had emerged the tents were nearly all struck, and the great wagons were lumbering into camp to receive them, with whatever else was to be transported. The first rays of the sun must fall upon the line of these wagons, moving away across the wide parade ground, followed by the column of men who would soon outstrip them. But on the occasion which I especially describe, the sun was shrouded, and when once upon the sandy plain, neither camp nor town nor river could be seen in the dimness, and when I rode forward and looked back there was only visible the long moving shadow column, seeming rather awful in its snake-like advance. There was a swaying of flags and multitudinous weapons that might have been camels' necks for all one could see, and the whole thing might have been a caravan upon the desert. Soon we debouched upon the Shell Road, and the wagon train drew on one side into the fog, and by the time the sun appeared the music ceased and the men took up the route step, and the fun began. The route step is an abandonment of all military strictness, and nothing is required of the men but to keep four abreast and not lag behind. They are not required to keep step, though, with the rhythmical ear of our soldiers, they almost always instinctively did so. Talking and singing are allowed, and of this privilege, at least, they eagerly availed themselves. On this day they were at the top of their exhilaration. There was one broad grin from one end of the column to the other. It might have been a caravan of elephants instead of camels, for the ivory and the blackness, the chatter and the laughter almost drowned the tramp of feet and the clatter of equipments. At crossroads and plantation gates the colored people thronged to see us pass. Every one found a friend and a greeting. "How do you do, auntie?" "Huddy, Bruddy Benjamin." "How do you find yourself dis morning, Tittywisser?" Such salutations rang out to everybody, known or unknown. In return, venerable kerchiefed matrons curtsied laboriously to every one, with an unfailing "Bress de Lord, brudder." Grave little boys, blacker than ink, shook hands with our laughing and utterly unimaginable drummers, who greeted them with this sure word of prophecy, "Dem's de drummers for de next war." Pretty mulatto girls ogled and coquetted, and made eyes, as Thackeray would say, at half the young fellows in the battalion. Meantime the singing was brisk along the whole column, and when I sometimes reined up to see them pass, the chant of each company entering my ear drove out from the other the ear and strain of the preceding. Such an odd mixture of things, military and missionary, as the successive waves of song drifted by, first John Brown, of course, then What Makes Old Satan for Follow Me So, then Marching Along, then Hold Your Light on Canaan's Shore, then When This Cruel War Is Over, a new favorite sung by a few, yielding presently to a grand burst of the favorite marching song among them all, and the one which at every step instinctively quickened, so light and jubilant its rhythm. All true children gwine in de wilderness, gwine in de wilderness, gwine in de wilderness, true believers gwined in de wilderness, to take de sins ob de world. Ending in a "Hoy!" after each verse, a sort of Irish yell. For all the songs, but especially for their own wild hymns, they constantly improvised simple verses, with the same odd mingling, the odd little facts of to-day's march being interwoven with the depths of theological gloom, and the same jubilant chorus annexed to all, thus: "We're gwine to de ferry, de bell done ringing, gwine to de landing, de bell done ringing, trust believer, oh, de bell done ringing, Satan's behind me, de bell done ringing, 'tis a misty morning, de bell done ringing, on de road am sandy, de bell done ringing, hell been open, de bell done ringing," and so on indefinitely. The little drum corps kept in advance, a jolly crew, their drums slung on their backs, and the drumsticks perhaps balanced on their heads. With them went the officers' servant boys, more uproarious still, always ready to lend their shrill treble to any song. At the head of the whole force there walked, by some self-imposed preeminence, a respectable elderly female, one of the company landresses, whose vigorous stride we never could quite overtake, and who had an enormous bundle balanced on her head, while she waved in her hand, like a sword, a long-handled tin-dipper. Such a picturesque medley of fun, war, and music, I believe, no white regiment in the service could have shown, and yet there was no straggling, and a single tap of the drum would at any moment bring order out of this seeming chaos. So we marched our 7 miles out upon the smooth and shaded road, beneath jasmine clusters and great pine cones dropping, and great bunches of mistletoe still in bloom among the branches. Arrived at the station, the scene soon became busy and more confused. Wagons were being unloaded, tents pitched, water brought, wood cut, fires made, while the field and staff could take possession of the abandoned quarters of their predecessors, and we could look round in the lovely summer morning to survey our empire and behold our home. The only thoroughfare by land between Beaufort and Charleston is the Shell Road, a beautiful avenue, which, about 9 miles from Beaufort, strikes a ferry across the Coosaw River. War abolished the ferry, and made the river the permanent barrier between the opposing picket lines. For 10 miles, right and left, these lines extended, marked by well-worn footpaths following the endless windings of the stream, and they never varied until nearly the end of the war. Upon their maintenance depended our whole foothold in the Sea Islands, and upon that again finally depended the whole campaign of Sherman. But for the services of the colored troops, which finally formed the main garrison of the Department of the South, the great march would never have been performed. There was thus a region 10 or 12 miles square of which I had exclusive military command. It was level, but otherwise broken and bewildering to the last degree. No road traversed it, properly speaking, but the Shell Road. All the rest was a wild medley of cypress swamp, pine barren, muddy creek, and cultivated plantation, intersected by intermediate lanes and bridle paths, through which we must ride day and night, and which our horses soon knew better than ourselves. The regiment was distributed at different stations, the main force being under my immediate command at a plantation close by the Shell Road, 2 miles from the ferry and 7 miles from Beaufort. Our first picket duty was just at that time of the first attack on Charleston, under Dupont and Hunter, and it was generally supposed that the Confederates would make an effort to recapture the Sea Islands. My orders were to watch the enemy closely, keep informed as to his position and movements, attempt no advance, and, in case they were attempted from the other side, to delay it as long as possible, sending instant notice to